calm, relaxed here. I need my coffee, Covfefe. Before I can do my Covfefe, I need my coffee. You say Covfefe, I say Covfefe. 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 Okay. Someone's phone is ringing in my building. I'm looking for talk amongst yourselves. Here, let's look at that. Oh, here I am. You can go back to your console, back to the nuclear submarine lady. September 15th, 1895. I know this is, can I find a different spot for this, do you think? Let's see if I can do something a little different. This is going to be, will this work? I'm backwards, so I'm going to write from here to here. That's not going to work. Put it on this side. See if this works. Where can I clamp it? Clamp it. If you guys could just even begin to see the trauma that I'm going in. Hate that light. Fuck me on a bike. Is that going to stay put? Maybe that'll stay put. Okay, where's the... This is kind of nice, this mood lighting. I'm just trying to figure out how this is going to best work. I think this is a nice way to do it. What are your thoughts? I'm going to move this here. This is this needle-nosy dip pen nib, number 3. Feels scratchy, Per Gustafson. Is it supposed to feel scratchy? The tines might be a little... The nib might be a little skewed. I wish you guys could see the... Can you see? Can I show you? I can show you. Now those lines look huge, humongoutoid. This is a Victorian dip pen nib that I shoved unceremoniously into a no-name pen that has a Weidlich-like clip. Is it a Weidlich pen? I'm not sure. It's really, really delicate. What would I use this pen for? What sort of thing would would this be something I would write marginalia in on the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence? Would I fit under the Second Amendment, under bearing arms? Just add the word and, little ampersand. You have the right to bear arms, and in addition, you have to attend military militia class on Sundays after church. And then that would be the defining thing. Well, does that mean I have to go to this church or that church? Do I have to sit through Pastor Youngdahl's interminably long and boring sermons in order to shoot my fucking gun? Is that what I have to do? Do I have to shoot the gun, or can I just... Maybe what they really meant in the Second Amendment was that you had the right to wear short sleeve shirts. You could bear arms. You didn't have to wear those wool onesies below your wool tunic, below your starched shirt. I guess they didn't have starch back then, but wool. I think that's what they meant. You could wear short sleeve shirts. They were looking ahead to the fashions. You could take your shirt off and show your muscly abs in Puritan New England. Do you think that's what they meant? You, the one follower or one person that's watching me? I think that's what they meant. I think that's really what they meant. Shit. Well, at least I figured out that this is a nice way to do what I'm doing. I don't generally like the light to come from the direction of the camera, so I may tweak it slightly, but in terms of showing you how a pen works, this isn't bad. This is very, if I had more light, I've got the tiniest light bulb on right now. So it's hard for me to even see what the nib is doing here. What I've done is I'm just gently rocking it sort of back and forth to see if I can get the two tines to meet better than they seem to be. What I'm doing when I do this is not only covering my thumb with ink, is I'm feeling the sharp edge of one or the other halves of the iridium. And if I feel it on this side as I go up, then I know that I have to tweak the nib that way, because this tine is lower than the other one. And if I feel it going down, then I know I have to do it the other way. And I feel it going up, so I have to push it down, right? And it's not writing at all. No, it is writing. Okay, this works well. This, I don't get the catch, the sharpness as I'm going uphill, which is what I was doing before. Now, sometimes when I turn on a light bulb and actually look at the nib, I see that the nib is all, going this way. Here's the, this is difficult because the camera, it's harder for me to move the camera closer to the paper. Moving the paper closer to the camera is a nightmare. But I might find the nib askew. If I'm looking straight down at the pen, the nib might be aiming, the feed is aiming straight ahead, and the nib might be aiming a little bit to the left or the right. And if the nib is writing perfectly fine and it's just a few degrees one way or the other, I'm not going to worry about it. But if it's really pushed in one way or the other, I'll take the nib out and take the feed out and try to find the sweet spot. But if it's just off by a little tiny bit, I'm not going to worry about it. If it's off by a lot, I might be putting stress on the back of the pen, the back of the nib. Now I know some of you experts out there are saying, Pierre, just do it right. Can you just do it? Why are you so goddamn lazy? I'm surprised if you flush the toilet, you're so lazy. Well, I do flush the toilet, thank you very much. I do change my socks, thank you very much. With pen nibs, though, and especially those, well, with any pen nib, you want them to be at their best. And you take it all apart. I hear you saying, no, that's not what I'm saying. You want them to be better, at their better. You don't want them to be best. Now, if you get them to where they just exactly sing every single correct note correctly, then sometimes leaving it well enough alone is what you can do. Even if it's 1 degree one way or 1 degree another way, you can live with that visual issue, because anytime you knock out a feed, yank out a nib, yank and knock are violent actions. And I'm yanking and knocking things that are 100 years old. I don't want to be yanked and knocked. And I'm 63, 64. Imagine how cranky I'd be if I were unwilling to be yanked and knocked if I were 40 years older than I am right now. That would piss me off. And these nibs don't like to get pissed off. This is a sweet nib. Now, what could Pierre Gustafson do with this nib? This is one where, again, I could write with shaded lettering on a very, very tiny, let's make another inch or so envelope. Let's say I ended up in Gulliver. I was Gulliver and I ended up in Lilliputian. I would be able to write a letter that they could read by unfolding it and not have to climb on a tall ladder to read it. They could just set it down on their feet and read it. I can't. So it would be His Excellency the Mayor of Lilliputian. Okay, now this, I'm not really shading here. Can I shade on something that's that small? How can I do that, Pierre Gustafson? I'm going to call him Jack Spratt. Come on, R-A-T. Jack Spratt, 10 Lollipop Lane, L-A-N-E, Lilliputian. I have letters that my ancestors wrote to each other, or bills that my grandfather got, and it just says Aiken Lambert Town, meaning Aiken Lambert in the same town. Didn't have to. I didn't actually have to write the mailman knew where my grandfather lived. Sometimes you see them in places like New York where you just write, Mrs. J.J. Astor, 40 Park Street, City. And you probably dropped them in the box that said City. They had such things back in the olden days. Make the life of the mailman easier. The sorting room. So this could write something that was really tiny and still get some shading. I have many people in line when wanting to buy this pen. Okay, but I'm not selling it, so you don't need to wait in line. Okay, here's the body and cap are all, second, third tier pens that were made back in 1890 and 1900. And they would have had a really nasty, rusty, non-gold nib in it. And the cap probably would have looked like this, but I didn't have a cap that looked like that. So I just put a black cap on it, black slip cap. And this is sort of the same, except it's really sloppy. Now here, oh, I see. I thought this little line right here next to the downstroke I made was because the feed was hitting it, which often happens on pens, and it was the ones from our accountant here in 1893. This is another one that is similar to the one I just showed you. It's funny how this one is bending. The side view of the nib, I never really paid attention to the side views. And when normally a pen flexes, it's sort of the curve goes, starts sort of at the breather hole and goes up, where both tines sort of expand. This one does this. I can see here's the breather hole on the side again. This one sort of does this. It's sort of just the front half of the nib seems to be flexing. And it's very, can I hold this up? See what that's doing? I know it's out of focus, I can tell. Don't get on my back. So maybe that's, how many years have I been doing this? And I haven't really thought about the side view of a pen. I think part of it was because the lighting, is that what all fountain pens do, Per Gustafson? And I've never noticed. Maybe the lighting here is just showing me the way the light reflects. Maybe that's just, see this, here's a Schaefer pen. And the whatever it is, the flex is happening way further back toward the breather hole. I see the whole front of the pen lifting up. Where on this pen, yes, there is movement going all the way back to the breather hole, but there's this extra stuff happening way toward the front, which is maybe causing the nib to splay more readily on a pen like that. This pen I am saying goodbye to. This I'm sending to Peter Draws, and fill it. I just put a sack on the pen. Let me see if it's working to my satisfaction. I'm filling it with sort of dirty water right now, which is not what I should probably be filling it with. But what I want to show Peter Draws is that the Wahl Eversharp pens, what I'm going to say about these pens to him maybe write a note on the envelope that contains this pen. Describe what it is, tell him what's wrong with it. What I want to do is send Peter some pens that he could probably buy relatively inexpensively and come up and still have a great nib. So the nib is great, the pen is less great, but it has a ding and it's missing its little cap ring. But other than that, it's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with the pen. But what I want to show him by sending him this pen is I'd like him to see the having a pen that has such a small diameter change between the cap and the barrel. And so and I think he might like that. Most fountain pens these days have a big difference between the cap and the barrel. When you post the pen, there's this big fat thing on the back that hits you right. What is that called? The groin of the thumb and forefinger. Right in that little padded area. And it's can be bothersome to me. But I also thought that this pen would be interesting for him because it's relatively thin. It's like almost like a pencil. And most pens these days that you buy are big fat things, or fatter than they need to be. You know, they have these converters in them, which are this fat. And then they have the contraption that holds the ink on the inside is even smaller. So you have this small little converter, and then that screws in, and then you have, the barrel that screws on top of that, and then the cap on top of that. You're carrying this log with you by the time you're all done with all of the surfaces and layers of petroleum products that it's a big pen, where this has one layer that's as thick as that. One is the cap and one is the barrel, and then inside of that is a sack, but and a pressure bar and all the other crap that it needs. But it's a relatively thin pen. It's relatively heavy for its mass is heavy. And I think that this pen would be something that he would really find interesting because of its thinness. It sort of has an immediacy to it. Is that the right word I want? Intimacy, immediacy. Intimacy maybe is what I mean. There's a certain closeness that you have to the nib. Boy, I'm sounding mystical. This is what happens when you have too many cups of coffee, Coffee in the morning. But there's a oneness to, and maybe the pen is gold and the nib is gold, and it sort of all blends together into one thing. Is that what's happening with me? Who the hell knows? But anyway, I thought that he would like to try out a pen like this. Now he can get a larger, longer size one with a clip, and he can buy one of those from me. He can buy one of those from online. He can buy them at a pen show. But the larger ones are going to, be $100 and more, whereas a small ladies' pen size like this, missing a clip and a dent in it, you might be able to get for $60 or $50, at a pen show. And if it isn't working, you might even get it for less. Not from me, though, because I put more value on these things than some people do. And it has a nice flexible nib, which I would, charge a premium on anyway. But I'm thinking that this would be a fun pen to show him. I'm also going to be sending him a 51 because of its perfection that it has. Even though it doesn't have a flexible nib, there's a perfection to this pen and a simplicity and an elegance to this pen that I think he might appreciate. Not all of his drawings show flexible line work, because he draws with Sharpies and micron pens and things like that too, which don't have any sort of a nib. You just have a sponge at the front that lets the ink go from the sponge to the paper. So a 51 shouldn't confuse the issue. if he knows that the line he's going to get is, it comes in two sizes. One size and a thinner size than that one size. It's slightly thinner on the upside down stroke. But Peter was interested in learning, going down the rabbit hole of pen collecting, but was afraid of it. And I'm trying to make him not be afraid by showing him that there are many, many options that you can go down that rabbit hole without having to spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. At a pen show, of course, your eye is going to be attracted to the bright, glitzy, big, expensive, fancy, rare, whatever pens they are. But you don't need to spend that much money. You can spend a tenth of that. Or you could go home, you could spend all of the money you went there with, but you can come home with 10 or 20 pens rather than one or two big ones. And chances are 4 or 5 of the pens you get will write a lot better than the one big one. Now that's not always true. There are some nice big pens or small pens that have a really, really nice nib, and the seller knows that it has a really, really nice nib, and he knows that Per Gustafsson is a fool with his money and might say, Rob, we'll just call him by his name. Rob knew that I could not resist this pen. Now, I don't think Rob raised the price just in order to sell me the pen. I think he would have charged anyone that amount of money, but he didn't. He didn't give me the Per Gustafsson friend break. Well, he could have. Maybe he could have. Was planning on selling that pen for $300 rather than $285 or whatever. But I paid essentially $200 for a nib because the nib was so great, and I'm afraid to use it. But so is it really that great? Probably not. I'm afraid to use it. This is the pen I showed you last night that has this sort of big ballsy sort of stiff nib that likes abuse. The woman that owned this pen, if in fact a woman owned it because of the ring top, she's the one that, it's not only that she was first in line at the flower show, she expected to be first in line. There's a brashness about this pen that sort of suggests to me that this woman was not afraid of using her purse against anyone that looked at her sideways. Men on the street, walking down the street, would cross the street if they saw her coming on their side of the sidewalk, their side of the road. They would jaywalk in traffic to get on the other side of it. They would sooner be hit by a Duesenberg going at 30 miles an hour than have this woman's handbag slam into them. Because this dame meant business. And she knew it, and she expected it, and she just I'll have to see what Ted Clausen comes up with this pen. He might come up with a completely different person. But I ponder these things. I mean, if I was able to find out who owned this pen, if someone said, "Oh, I recognize that pen on your video, and I know exactly that one belonged to my grandmother, and she was a little old lady." Sorry about this. And they say, "I saw that pen and it belonged to my great grandmother. And do you want to know about her?" And I might say, no, I have this, I know the story. I want to believe the story that I just made up. And they might say, well, she was a little old lady and she went to church every day, not just on Sundays, because she was the organist. She was the church organist, and she never actually learned how to play the organ very well. She knew one or two hymns, the easiest ones, and the church parishioners only got to sing those two songs. She also knew the song "Go Tell Aunt Rhody," and the minister had to come up with new words to go with that tune so that they'd have 3 different songs to sing in church. And she always was last in line at the flower show because she was a tiddler. Is that the right word? She drank herself into a stupor every Saturday night at the bar with the farmers and got hammered. No, that's not right. She has to play the organ. That's the wrong story. Anyway, they could tell me something entirely different about this pen, and it would have been right because it's truth. But I have alternate facts in my little brain. We've learned that alternate facts are just as good as the real thing, especially if stupid people believe them. You know who I'm talking about. My inauguration had more people than anyone. The Queen of England had the best time with me. That's what I heard. Who did you hear that from, Mr. Trump? Was it the chambermaid of the Queen's chambermaid? After she left the dinner, she was laughing hysterically at the person on her right. Is that what makes you think that she had the best time with you? Or did you hear it from your son-in-law who knows how to make you happy? But just think for a second. The Queen of England has met, I don't know if millions of people are the right number, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, heads of state, people that she knighted, Noel Coward. You think we're more entertaining than Noel Coward? Think again. Mick Jagger, Sir Mick Jagger. So My story, even if it's an alternate fact, is not as far-fetched as that story. She thought I was the best. She had the best time with me. Mr. Frickin' President. This is really a neat nib. I'm glad I put it in this pen. This nib did not belong in this pen when I got it. I have no idea what nib belonged in it. So clearly it's a fiction, what I'm coming up with. But it's an alternate truth. In some parallel universe, this pen did exist, and it did exist in the hands of this battle axe that walked down the street on her 3 legs, because in that universe, humanoids had 3 legs. So they were similar to humanoids in all other ways, except their anatomy had 3 legs. So here's the male of the species, and there's his 3 legs, and there's his 2 arms, and his 1 head, right? But he has 2 bits of junk. He has a pair of naughty bits. His middle foot, his middle leg, that means he has to have a pair of exit strategies as well. One was for the intestinal tract at some point after the stomach. While it was in the intestines, there was a area for the roughage and an area for the protein. The meat went one way and the vegetables went another way. And they were processed differently by the body. And then what was left over that wasn't used went out, exited one thing or another. The toilets had to be slightly different. They had to be a little bit more wide than they were long. They were oval in this way. Is there too much information happening here? Okay. There's a person that's getting a pen from me who wanted to join in the chat, and he likes the stories I come up with, and he bought a pen because of a story I made up, and he knew I made it up. He was listening as I made it up. Now he tuned in later, but it was a pen he'd already said he wanted, and I was coming up with a story about the Medal of Honor winner whose pen was gnawed on while he was in the foxhole, and the palm tree fell on it. And he said the palm tree was what got him to buy that pen. He loved that. The climax of the story was this soldier having succeeded in not being killed while liberating a Japanese command center on Iwo Jima, was killed by a falling palm tree. Ding sold. The cash register, the internet cash register went. So I was going to show him the pen that he wants to get, that I had to do a little bit of cosmetic repair to in order to make it work. And I ended up coming up in my little mind a story about the other part of the pen, the other flaw that I wasn't going to fix. This is really a neat pen. And this is a guy I want to meet. I want to meet this guy. I want to be part of that universe. How did I talk about that? Well, the alternate universe where this dame, so this dame too, you know, she walks down the street on her three legs and she has three pairs. She's a pair of naughty bits as well. Do people in this, do they have three breasts though? I wonder. I mean, do they, when they give, I think they'd have, if they gave birth, do they have, how does that work? Biology. If there was a universe that had three-legged men and women with two sets of junk each, when they copulate, write your answers below. You try to figure this out for me. Would they I guess they'd need two sets of ovaries and uteri. I would think that half of the body could be pregnant and the other half could be barren. How about that? You'd walk sideways down the, you know, this woman, a pregnant woman with, she'd be sort of pregnant on one side. It would be a funny place, that's for sure. I don't think I want to go there. I don't think I want to, well, I wouldn't mind meeting the guy. That would be fine. I'm going to go get that pen and another cup of Coffee Covfefe. Be right back. The person who's going to be buying the pen, this is the elder brother to this one. It's a Wall Eversharp Greek key pattern. And it had two cosmetic issues. And one of the issues I, quote, fixed. and the other one I didn't fix. Now this person that wants to buy this pen also wanted me to find, this is not, he wanted me to find a pen that you could do place cards with, and I thought maybe this might have that quality, but it might if you really think about it. But this might work for him for that purpose. So I'm not going to tell the story about this pen, the story I came up with about this pen. But what I will do is I will make the illustrations for the story while I'm sitting here. So let me get my paper and I'll do some drawings with it. Okay. So this story will involve a city of angels, Los Angeles, and it will be in front of a theater that's showing a silent movie. So these are the spotlights going up in the air. Here's the crowd of fans. Name and lights. Here's the marquee and the lights. And the police holding back the crowds. This is an Art Deco theater, of course. Make it Art Deco-y. Rialto. There's this big tower on the top and Art Deco doodahs and ding-dongs. This is at night, but I'm not going to draw it. Here's the moon. And so this is the location. Okay. Now we have to add another part of the story. We have this is a different time. Years have passed since that illustration not was made, but represents what happened in that illustration. Am I not live? Sorry about this, folks. Okay, I'm going to stop this one. Let me just do a few more drawings here. Here's the rest of the plane. This is plane crash thing. So you've got a nose of a plane. You've got wreckage, you've got chairs, you've got body parts. Here's a body part. Flame, smoke coming up. Here's part of an engine. Bent propeller blades. You've got the tail. Over here, you've got more dead body parts. And here's the NTSB looking at the results with their clipboards and their cameras and their masks. More body parts. Aww, the little child's doll. Aww, so sad. Here's the little child. Just, that's what some of these people say. Oh, we saw the little child's doll. It was so sad. Meanwhile, you know, clutching the doll is the hand of the little child. They seem to be more saddened by the doll that survived the crash than the pulverized, obliterated child. Okay, so there that is. There's that part of the story. Oh, and then we have another part of the story. We got a big, fancy, very rare, expensive car that was made not only by the Rolls-Royce company, but by the Bugatti company. It was a very rare merger or collaboration is what I want between the two companies. Each spoke had spokes. They sort of looked like that. The spoke went like this and then went like that to the rim of the tire. It was just an amazing car. It had so much. It had bells and whistles. Here's a bell. Here's a whistle. And it had horns and lights. It had fog lights on top of lights. And it had a little rotating light on top like a siren, except it wasn't then it had up here, it had a disco ball. So you could tell that the man driving was an important movie star. It had one of these, and it had a boat tail. This Rolls Bugatti conglomerate. And it was completely plated in aluminum, because aluminum was expensive back then, more expensive than gold. I don't know if that's true at that time, but it was at one point more expensive than gold. So a solid aluminum chassis. And its tires it didn't have just white wall tires, it had white tires. The tires were white. How's that for a story? That's another part of the story, and I've run out of paper. I need to have more pieces of paper. Okay, one more drawing, and then I'll restart it and tell the story. White bow tie, bib front shirt, tailcoat for the opening. Here's his car, the back end of the car. Siren, and here's the boat tail back end. And it has a little propeller back here. And the air that goes around the car and streams back toward that propeller. There's a little generator in here. Here are the spokes that I spoke about. And here's the tail of the car is conical. It's kind of like a triumph nib, but it ends in a little propeller. And the air that comes around the car as it's traveling is, here's the door of the car open. He just stepped out. That's traveling toward the back, spins the propeller, which then recharges the complicated battery. Because this car was also, the engine was made by Nikola Tesla, and it has this very rare battery. Here's the tailcoat. Here's the flappers wear hats. I guess they must have worn hats. Here's the crowd. Okay. Ready to hear the exciting story? Let's turn it off and we'll restart it. Where's my thing that I can turn it off with? This is complicated. This is very ungraceful what I have to do here to get this thing to turn this thing off. End stream. End.